Okay, actually, now that Maddie and Joe, you're here, do you guys want to check your PowerPoint? And I'm going to make you co-hosts so that
Okay.
you can
Sure.
share your screen.
Hi, Stephanie.
Okay, so you guys should be able to share your screen now. Let me know if that's not working.
Good.
Okay. Cool. So what we'll do is I'll go back to sharing my screen. I'll put the slide up, and then about 2 minutes before, I'll turn it over to you guys, and we'll get ready.
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks. I'm just going to mute us for now.
Can you guys hit stop on your screen share on your end so that I can share mine? There we go. Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. We're about 2 minutes out.
Thanks. We said thanks, but we realized you were muted. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Dan, our presentation isn't. Oh, 1 sec.
Let's see, are you not able to share your screen? Is that the issue? Or
Yeah.
let me try to co-host again.
Okay.
You should already be, oh, you're already a co-host.
Okay.
Try it one more time, please.
All right. We good?
Yeah, good to go.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
Fantastic. I guess I should set mine up.
Mute it and do all that. True. Don't want to be those guys.
Calling me. In the watch group. Some people find the watch group.
What do you think?
One of them's got to be right.
Probably.
I would think.
Yours. Yes.
Mhm.
I can introduce you. I thought everyone's introducing themselves, but yes, I'll introduce you. So we have Matt and Joe to do the lovely Over the Rainbow LGBTQ and representation in picture books. So without further ado,
Thanks,
Thanks, Stephanie. We weren't
Stephanie.
sure what the process was.
Yes, yes. And we're pretty laid back here. So any questions you got, just type them in the box and the lovely Stephanie will forward them to us.
Yeah. So welcome to Over the Rainbow LGBTQ plus representation in picture books. As Stephanie so kindly introduced, my name is Joe Prince. I'm the curriculum and outreach educator at Bowling Green State University. I'm a former middle school librarian and middle school English teacher. All told, I've been in public education in some form for about 23 years now.
And I'm Matt Bauer. I am an art specialist here at Findlay City Schools. I do kindergarten through 5th grade. I have 700 kids that I see every week, and this is my 16th year getting ready to get started in August.
And today we're going to talk about representation in picture books, specifically LGBTQ representation. We will kind of unpack the definition of LGBTQ+. We'll talk a little bit about misperceptions related to representation in children's literature. And then we're going to talk about, very broad view, the evolution of LGBTQ representation in picture books. So what does LGBTQ plus even mean, Matt?
All those letters,
All
right?
those
It
letters.
seems like as time goes on, more and more letters get added into what LGBTQ is.
Oftentimes you'll see LGBTQIA plus, and there is very much a focus in the community to be as inclusive as possible, which is why there are oftentimes so many letters, and that is also represented by the plus itself. Traditionally, it was referred to as the LGBT community, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. The Q was added to be a kind of all-encompassing for queer
Or questioning.
or questioning, absolutely. And there has been a reclamation of the word queer recently. Queer for the longest time was used as a slur against those in the LGBT community, but it's been reclaimed. And oftentimes individuals will use it as identification, regardless of where they are in the rainbow.
On the spectrum, yeah.
The plus can refer to people who are asexual, intersex, pansexual, so on and so forth. If you want a really great resource to really understand what the letters mean, and you'll have to, if you hear this banging behind us, it's not that there's this, they're not construction, but as Maddie told me earlier,
it's just the building, it shifts, the heat and the humidity and the cold, and it does its thing. So
if you hear popping, we are not in
it's
peril.
just us.
Yeah, we don't think we're in peril anyway. So as I was saying, if you want to really a good resource to turn to really understand and learn about those different categories within the spectrum, the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, has a great glossary on their website. So I'd invite you to check that out. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about why representation matters in children's books. So the first thing that is important to point out is that according to a 2021 Gallup poll, 5.6% of the US population identifies as LGBTQ+. And Maddie and I were talking, and we actually think this number is pretty
Kind of
low.
Yeah.
So there was an article in the New York Times a couple of months ago that indicated that between 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 of Generation Z identifies as not straight. So this number is, I think, flexible, but nearly all of us know somebody who is part of the LGBTQ population, whether they are out, and whether they are self-identifying or not. And some people might say, like, well, if it's only 5% of the population, does it really matter? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, they count.
They count.
Right.
Everyone counts in small or large amounts. Everyone counts.
Right.
Another thing that matters with representation is that 1 in 5 same-sex couples have children. And so those children are likely going to go to a public school or a public institution or even a private school, and they deserve to see their families represented in the literature that is read to them or the literature that is available to them.
Right, absolutely. The longer we go, the more families I see come through my classrooms who have, same-sex parents and siblings in their own family. And like you said, totally deserve to see them represented and feeling important in our school culture.
And some of the books we're going to talk about today have children who have same-sex parents. And the beauty of these books is that it affirms those experiences. The other thing that is important is that 4 in 10 LGBTQ youth do not feel protected, accepted, or safe in their communities, which is alarming. That these children don't feel seen, that they feel shunned or overlooked in their communities or even in danger.
And I would even say that's probably low. Comparing, 4 in 10, that's probably higher than the numbers are probably higher than that, than what people probably even admit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These first three statistics, by the way, are from the Human Rights Campaign, which I referenced earlier. So we want you to keep in mind of this traditionally underserved population and how important it is for them to feel safe and accepted. And another thing that's really important to point out is that by seeing others in a represented in literature, is that literature should reflect a child's experience and validate a child's experience. And I came across a really wonderful quote from Chad Everett, who is an educator and literacy coach in Mississippi. And he says, our classrooms and our libraries must contain a variety of texts, allowing each student to read across his or her continuum. All readers should be able to find texts that affirm their lives and experiences. And all readers should be able to find texts that affirm the lives and experiences of others.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of inclusivity is really, really important because what inclusivity does is that it shows that everyone is a part of a community, and no matter who you are on the inside, you are in a community and you're valued by that community and you value others within that community.
Mm-hmm. And how many stories have we heard even recently of people who have done these big important things and said, whether it was their race or their gender or their age or whatever it is, and said, oh, if I was a kid and had that as my role model, where would I be now? You know, so it falls in the category of inclusiveness right there.
And ideally, we'll get to a point where we'll no longer have to say this. Like, I didn't see myself represented in literature when I was a kid. You know, the goal is to get to a point where,
well, that'd be great.
Yeah, where everyone is represented and everyone is seen and everyone is validated. Their experiences are validated. And I don't think that's a utopia. I think that that's a distinct possibility. And I think we're getting there in children's literature.
Bit by bit.
We're not done yet with why representation matters. And this just piggybacks on the quote that I read from Everett. To see someone different than oneself and recognize their humanity helps develop empathy.
Absolutely.
And then finally, LGBTQ books are among the most challenged and banned books in this country. And we have some really startling statistics that we'd like to share. Since January of this year, 27 transgender or gender nonconforming individuals have been murdered. And with transgender individuals being a small portion of the LGBTQ population, that's an alarming number that 27 have already been murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to books being challenged and banned in this country, the last 5 years have had some pretty eye-opening statistics related to literature. So actually in 2020, this is the first time in several years, only one book in the top 10 slot of most challenged books issued by the American Library Association. Only one of those books was LGBTQ, and that's Alex Gino's George. And George has actually claimed the top spot for 3 consecutive years. It is about a transgender child. And Gino, the author, has recently kind of reclaimed the title because the title of the book is Misgendering the Child in the Story. And Gino has taken to, when signing copies of George, crossing out the title George and writing Melissa's story as the actual title of the book.
Cool.
But if we look at the most challenged books in the last 5 years, in 2019, 8 of the 10 most challenged books in this country were LGBTQ. In 2018, 5 of the 10 most challenged books were LGBTQ, 5 in 2017, and 4 out of 10 in 2016.
Yeah.
Maddie, we have a problem on our hands, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's important for children to see themselves, and there are going to be challenges along the way, but we need to stay firm and we need to make sure that children feel seen. So we want to talk a little bit about misperceptions of children and queer content.
Mm-hmm.
first thing,
No, you go ahead.
okay. The first thing that we want to talk about is that a lot of the arguments that people use of why LGBTQ literature is inappropriate for young children is that children are not aware of their sexuality. And this is inherently not true. For one thing, adults are very good at impressing upon children the idea of sexuality. So who among us hasn't, said to a young person like, ooh, little Susie and Johnny have a crush on each other. Isn't that cute? Or, Johnny and Susie are going to get married when they grow up. So we do make children aware of sexuality and gender roles at a very young age. And
Yes, even, working with elementary kids, I can't tell you how many times I hear kids, say, oh, I've got a boyfriend, I've got a girlfriend, I've, the snickering of so-and-so like so-and-so, even all the way down to kindergarten, whether they're actually aware of it or not. But
yeah, and there's that old little nursery rhyme too, so-and-so sitting in a tree, K-I-S-S-I-N-G. I mean, you hear that at age 4.
Right.
Children are aware of who they are and what their likes and dislikes are. The second thing is, Maddie and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, the LGBTQ content recruits children, which is not true. I mean, people are going to be who they are going to be, and a book is not going to change your sexuality.
And in the particularly galling thing about the recruitment of children is that it implies that there is some kind of nefarious master plan, which is, if you go long view with it, it's a silly thing to think, but also no one ever is recruited into their sexuality. Heterosexuals are not recruited into being heterosexuals, just as neither Maddie nor I were recruited as
right. I missed
children.
That meeting.
I missed it too. And furthermore, there is so much, in many ways, being LGBTQ, it is it's a hidden identity, and it can be very painful too. So the idea, the implication that there's a recruiting scheme is very harmful to hear. And then, this ties into the first thing that we said, about there's something sometimes it often feels like people who are anti-LGBTQ literature or reading LGBTQ literature to children, that the reason that we want to push back on this is that there's something inherently sexual about LGBTQ content.
Right. And sometimes it's just as easy as, saying that the character has 2 parents, that doesn't mean that they're somehow imposing their sexual anythings on their children. It's just they mention that, oh, I have 2 parents that are the same sex, and then people get upset.
Right. And if showing 2 parents of the same sex is sexual, then I would say showing parents of opposing genders is also sexual, because the implication is that sex was had to have a baby. So there isn't anything inherently sexual about LGBTQ, just like there isn't anything inherently sexual about heterosexuals as well. It is what it is, and things are what you make of them as well.
Yeah.
And as an English professor once said, when it comes to reading into things, sometimes a big tasty mushroom is just a big tasty mushroom, and there's no reason to read into anything more than what is at the surface. And showing parents is just showing parents. Stephanie, are there any questions from the audience before we dive into kind of the history of queer representation in picture books?
Nope, you guys are good to go. No questions yet.
Okay, thanks. Let's get to the books. That's what they're here for. They want to hear the books.
Okay. So we're first going to start talking about the 2 pioneers in children's literature with LGBTQ representation. The first one, and most definitely controversial in its time and controversial now, is Leslie Newman's Heather Has 2 Mommies. Leslia Newman, this was her debut picture book, and she is quite a large player in children's literature now, specifically children's literature about the Jewish experience in the United States and the queer experience in the United States. Heather Has Two Mommies is a very dense picture book. It is very text heavy, and it is also very clinical in the way it is written. There's a very instructive quality to the writing. So Newman isn't just interested in the fact that Heather has two mommies, but she goes through the process of how two women have a baby. And so there's a very technical, clinical aspect to the writing in the book. The emphasis is on love and family. And toward the end of the book, Heather is put in a daycare run by a woman named Molly. And Molly teaches all of the children in the class about the different families. And she has each child draw the families that they are from. And then each child talks about their family structure. So in many ways, this book is very, very inclusive. It's an early indication of the different types of family. Not surprising, it was enormously controversial in 1989. Yeah. The other, and we should say too, if you haven't already, put us in speaker view, and you'll probably be able to see the images much better as when we hold up the books. Following on Heather Has Two Mommies coattails was Daddy's Roommate by Michael Wilhoit. And this, unlike Heather Has Two Mommies, is not dense in its text as well. But what it does is it presents a young boy whose father and mother have been divorced, and his father gets a roommate named Frank. And the roommate, of course, is not a roommate. It is his father's boyfriend. And just like Heather Has Two Mommies, Daddy's Roommate set off an absolute firestorm. This is the copy I'm holding is the 10-year anniversary, and Wilhoit writes in the back how shocked he was by the pushback against this book. And on a personal note, I will say that this book is, if anything, it shows how boring marriages and relationships are. There is so much domesticity in this book. You know, Frank and Daddy clean together, they eat together, they go to sleep together, they shave together. And I can't imagine sharing a sink and shaving next to somebody, but like, it's just so, like the relationship is just so staid, and it just shows the mundaneness, the mundanity of being in a relationship. But the really beautiful thing about this book is that it also shows the love between the child and the kind of adoptive parent. So Frank does all the things that Daddy also does. He reads the little boy. He makes amazing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And toward the end of the book, what's really nice is that the little boy asks his mother about Frank and Daddy, and the boy says, and the mother says they're gay, and the boy doesn't really understand what this word means, but he thinks, you know, if it means loving each other, then that's the best thing. And Mommy affirms this as well. So there's nothing tragic in this book. There's nothing heartbreaking. There is this sense of two people loving each other and loving the child as well. Again, enormously controversial in 1990. In about the mid-aughts, we see a development of animals being used as arbiters for queerness.
Yes, and so our first book on this category is And Tango Makes Three. I know a lot of you already know this book. It was very controversial, like you said, in 2005. It's from Justin Richardson and is based on the incredible true story of two gay penguins who, with the help of the Central Park Zoo, adopted a baby penguin. This classic picture book is a great way to show your child that both human and animal families come in different shapes and different sizes. My little note I have on here is that I can remember when this book came out in 2005, And it was unlike any other book that we had really seen before. At least I hadn't seen one like this before. And it was very controversial. The great story, it's a great story to introduce, I think, also in adoptions, because the two penguins had to get an egg from a female male nest and get placed into their nest so then they could incubate it, and then Tango came along. So that's a great story for adoptions. And interesting fact, Tango was born in 1999 and went on to pair, that's the little penguin, she went on to pair with another female penguin for 2 more mating seasons after that. So, yeah.
And I remember this book also being super controversial when it came out. And even though it's a fictionalized story, it's, you know, rooted in fact. I mean, it actually happens.
It really did happen, yeah.
So if you're getting upset about something that actually happened, it seems
In nature.
yeah, in
Right.
nature.
Yeah.
But this, yeah, it's a really beautiful, beautiful picture book, and still controversial to this day.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Another book where animals are used as avatars is 2008's Uncle Bobby's Wedding. And this is the story of Chloe, a little hamster whose favorite uncle is Bobby, and Bobby announces that he's going to be marrying Jamie. And it's really not even clear what Jamie's gender is until about halfway through the book. And the book cover, of course, also gives it away.
Mhm.
But this book really uses animals to communicate a child's feeling of isolation and abandonment when a very close relative, someone who they love very dearly, has a major life change. So Chloe's very scared of losing her Uncle Bobby and that things won't be the same. And what she learns is the more time she spends with Jamie and Bobby, she learns to love Jamie as well. And the critical portion of this book that I always find so very lovely is when she and Jamie and Bobby are toasting marshmallows. And she says, I just wish Jamie could be my uncle too. And it's shared with her that you're going to get your wish. You're going to get to have 2 uncles, and you don't have to choose a favorite because they're both going to love you. Sarah Brandon recently updated this book as well, just last year, and used human characters as the actual avatars of the story. My heart is still with the original Uncle Bobby's Wedding. But this is a great book to teach children that things change, and things may change and will change, but those who love you are always going to love you and care for you.
Mhm.
Matt and Joe, you have a question.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, it says, due to current restrictive legislation, do you see children's literature as informing future legislation? Considering the fact that the majority of lawmakers are cisgender and 60+ years old, or will it be increasingly difficult to keep these restrictive laws from limiting acceptance in children's lit?
Joe?
I mean,
Yeah, that's a packed question.
that's
That's a good one. That's a good question. I don't know, that I can only say what I feel. And I
Right.
feel like as time goes on, like this box is just getting more and more open. You're seeing more people being comfortable being themselves. The more you see that, the more that grows, the more that people are comfortable producing these beautiful books. And these are the families that they are producing them for. I would think it would only get better. Easier, maybe.
I think so. So Matt and I were having breakfast a couple weeks ago when we were planning this, and there comes a point where you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And I don't think that is going to stop legislators, especially bad actors in legislation, from attempting to pass restrictive laws. But I don't think it's going to work in the long term. That might be a little rosy glasses, but I think especially the younger generation, they're more willing to talk openly about these things.
Absolutely.
They are more accepting than even Gen X. And I think that even though, you know, the legislations are controlled by the older population and cis het males as well, I don't think they're not going to be in power forever. And I think the people have spoken, and in children's literature, not just in LGBTQ representation in children's literature, there is a massive transformation that is happening, a long overdue transformation that's happening in children's literature, where we are not just seeing stories about white children, about heteronormative children. We are finally representing the tapestry that is humanity.
Diversity.
And yeah, and there's no dialing back on that. Is it going to change the hearts and minds of legislators?
Some of them are always going to hate.
Right. Haters going to hate. But I think my hope is that we will continue with progress, and it will only get better.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question, though. Food for thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I would encourage, if you feel strongly about representation, you feel strongly about children being exposed to quality literature that represents the lives of their fellow countrymen, country people, write your legislator if they are acting poorly, or, march in the streets when the opportunity presents itself, because we are only as strong as our weakest link, as they say. And if we're all strong, we rise up together and we make sure that our voices are heard. Good can come of that.
Yeah. All right. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, did that answer your question?
I hope so. All right. What's next?
We want to talk about the representation of love.
Who doesn't want to talk about love? This next book, Prince and Knight, actually, I didn't know this one. Joe introduced me to this one, is by Daniel Hack. Prince and Knight is a queer spin on the classic story of a knight slaying a dragon to save the princess. In this version, a noble prince sets out to find a bride, but to no avail. Instead, he meets a brave knight who is defending the kingdom from a wicked dragon. It's a wonderful story about true love, acceptance, and bravery. This book was published in 2018, and this charming picture book was written by, like I said, Daniel Hack, who wanted to use the strong archetypes of a prince and a knight to show that gay people can also play those strong, brave roles as well. I love the pictures in this book too. So it's the same, classic fairy tale, only how many times have you seen a prince and a knight fall in love, or, a prince and a princess, or a princess and a, I don't know, what's a female knight?
Well, there is a
Is
follow-up.
there a female knight? What is that?
There's a follow-up to this in 2019. Hack wrote Maiden and Princess.
A maiden, okay,
So,
that makes sense.
So really focusing
That's
on
beautiful.
lots of different types of love.
That's great. That's a great story.
I should mention too, with other animal books, there's also Warm and Worm and A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo. So those books are still being written to express that. My favorite love book was just published last year. I think
This is such a good book. Oh, if you don't know this book.
So
this is so good.
It's from Archie to Zach, and frankly, this very much kind of captures that whole thing of children developing crushes on each other, and it's inexplicable, but we usually only represent crushes as heteronormative crushes. And from Archie to Zach is a story of Archie who loves Zach and Zach loves Archie. And Archie decides to write a little notes to Zach telling him how much he loves him, but the notes never seem to come out just the way he wants to. So he never gives Zach these notes. And what I really love about this book is that it just shows Archie and Zach having fun together, being children together, doing the things that children do. They draw pictures, they go to museums, everything they do is together. And so eventually these notes get found by their classmates, Zelda, Zinnia, and Zuzella, and they decide to give the notes to Zach, who of course responds in kind to Archie that he also loves him back. And it is just a very, very sweet book about those first crushes, and affirms that yeah, children do develop crushes on each other and they express tenderness and kindness to those who they love.
So
Fabulous
cute.
book. Love that book. So cute.
All right, expression. We are up to expression. Our next book is Julian is a Mermaid, and I love this book by Jessica Love. On the train ride home, Julian, excuse me, sees three beautiful women dressed as mermaids. Immediately, all Julian can think about is making his own mermaid costume. Julian is a Mermaid is a fun and thoughtful book that encourages children to express themselves and use their imagination. Now, this book, I actually first learned about it right here at Mazza a few years ago in one of our pullout conferences, or our pullout sessions, actually. The Coney Island Mermaid Parade is an actual event that does happen in Brooklyn every June to celebrate the coming of summer, and hosts around 3,000 people. This was pre-COVID, but I almost got to go to it once. I almost did. Our
You're so lucky.
trip got canceled, but it would have been amazing. I especially love the soft colors of the watercolor and the gouache. Many of our artists this year, I've noticed, have used a lot of gouache, as well as the message of expression. So he sees with his grandma these women in their beautiful costumes, and he wants to go home and make his own costume. And how many times, I don't know, how many times have we all played dress up? At least when I was a kid, that's what we did. And I guess I'm still probably doing it today. But anyway, and kids, today with their imagination, they love, dressing up in different costumes. And who doesn't want to be a mermaid? Yeah. Anyways, beautiful colors, beautiful story. It's just, how happy am I for that grandma that she looks at her grandson and says, "You're amazing. Go be you. Like, who cares? Do your thing and you'll, land out on top." That's awesome.
And there was a wonderful sequel published last year, Julian at the Wedding, equally beautiful.
Ooh, I don't know that one. I'll have to check that one out. All right, Pink is for Boys. This is the next one.
It sure is.
I feel like we're on one of those daytime talk show. A little bit. Sorry.
One of us is Kelly Ripa, and the other one's Hoda.
All right.
Oh, Kelly, Hoda, we don't have necessarily a question, but a request.
Oh, sure.
Make a book list available so that they're not scribbling all these titles down. Will you have a book list available for them afterwards?
Sure, we can make one.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good thought. Let's see how we doing on time. Yeah. All right. Pink is for Boys by Rob Perlman. Pink is for boys and girls and everyone. This timely and beautiful picture book rethinks and reframes the stereotypical blue, pink, gender binary that empowers children and their grown-ups to express themselves in every color of the rainbow. Featuring a diverse group of relatable characters, Pink is for Boys invites and encourages girls and boys to enjoy what they love to do, whether it's racing cars and playing baseball or loving unicorns and dressing up. Vibrant illustrations help children learn and identify the vast array of colors that surround them every day, from the oranges of a popsicle to the green of a grassy field, all the way up to the wonder of a multicolored rainbow. And I love this as an art teacher. Using these books in my classroom, it's not like I'm ever going to go in with a lesson and say, hey, guess what? We're going to talk about gender or being gay or any of that. It's all about, you have your lessons, you have your standards and things, and then you find the books and whatnot that support your lessons. And working in elementary with children, a lot of times you do get the, well, that's a girl color, that's a boy color. When I start kindergarten, I always, the very first day, we sit around in a circle and I ask the kids, what's your favorite color? And it's fun because, you get every color of the rainbow, and sometimes every kid wants to tell you every color of the rainbow. And, but sometimes, you do get surprised. Sometimes you have those boys that adamantly will say, yeah, pink is my favorite color, or, girls might choose blue or whatnot. But this book is really kind of cool because it takes you through, all the colors, and about how when you looked at your life, it is full of color. Color is everywhere. You have colors all over you. Just a really fun, sweet book. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that.
And books like Pink is for Boys they're super important because we have attached meaning to colors where there is no color, and this idea that boys behave one way and girls another way, when our founding fathers literally wore powdered wigs and high heels, and suddenly that's something that only girls do. So expression and allowing children to express themselves is important. And
It's just color. It's just color.
It's just color.
I do self-portraits and with the kids, every single year. And we'll always get, the kid that says, those group of boys that'll be like, well, I'm not making my lips pink. And I'm like, what color do you think your lips are? You're going to make them red? Like, I don't know, but it's fun. It's interesting.
Next, we want to talk about books that affirm gender identity.
Me again. This next book is It Feels Good to Be Yourself by Teresa Thorne. Some people are boys, some people are girls, some people are both, neither, or somewhere in between. This sweet, straightforward exploration of gender identity will give children a fuller understanding of themselves and others. With child-friendly language and vibrant art, It Feels Good to Be Yourself provides young readers and parents alike with the vocabulary to discuss this important topic with sensitivity. With a great deal of confusion about gender identities, this book plainly explains what all the different terms mean and is a good resource for children and adults alike. It seems like as time goes on, even for people in the community, it can get tough when people identify as almost anything now, and sometimes as nothing. That is hard too. And so I'm sure you've all begun to see when people send out emails and things, and they'll have their pronouns and things at the bottom of how they prefer to be identified as. This book is really super straightforward with, it says this is the term and this is what it means. They put it in a story form, but it's, as far as I have seen, the most straightforward book with terms. And of course, as time goes on, there are more and more terms that I'm hearing all the time and think, what is that? I've never even heard of that. What does that mean? But beautiful illustrations once again. Yeah.
And just because we haven't heard of terms before doesn't mean they've never existed until it just means they've been in the shadows. And I think the wonderful thing about this is learning is great. Learning new things is fabulous. And I enjoy having my eyes opened to what is new and exciting. And oh my gosh, yeah, these illustrations are just stunning. Another book that addresses gender identity and uses animals actually is the 2018 book by Ariely Anderson, Neither. And it's the story of an animal who lives in the world of this or that. So a binary. And in that world, you're a bunny or you're a bird. And that's it. And she's very good at setting up the story of one thing or the other. But one day, an animal is born that has the ears of a bunny and the body of a bird. And it's told that it can't be both. It has to be one or the other. And so the animal travels to a different land, and I love this, it's called the land of all. So really embracing inclusivity. And in the land of all, you can be the mixture, the very identity that you are. And so our little friend is accepted into this new world with cats who have butterfly wings, frogs that have horns, and the bunny bird is also accepted. And I love the visual clues that are given throughout the book as well. So the little bunny bird is green because all the bunnies are blue and all of the birds are yellow. And so this is also a great way to teach the color wheel.
Yes. That's great.
Next, we want to talk about family diversity because we mentioned this in the very beginning, that it's important for children to see their families. And so I'm going to talk about the book My Maddie. because this is the first time I've ever seen this kind of representation in a children's book. So we think of parents in the binary, whether it's a heterosexual pairing of a mother and a father, or whether it's a pairing of two men or two women. But oftentimes we think parents are in the binary, but that's not true. And My Maddie is about a non-gender conforming parent. And Maddie is actually a portmanteau of mom and daddy, Maddie. And so with this book,
I didn't know that until you told me that the other day. I have never heard that term before, and I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And there are children who have non-gender conforming parents. And the way this book explains it is this little girl loves her Maddie, and Maddie's eyes are neither brown nor green. They're hazel. And the little girl goes, I just wish more color. I wish more things could be hazel. And Maddie talks about sporks. They're neither a fork nor a spoon. They're both. And so Maddie is neither a male nor female. They're non-gender conforming, but like all of these wonderful books, it shows the love between a parent and a child, and how marvelous love is and how important love is. So although Maddie is gender non-conforming, they still love their child, they still care for their child, and the child loves them back. What a beautiful message to give to young children, that love above all things is the most important thing. And this book is absolutely beautiful in teaching children about that.
That's great. Our next book is about a little girl who has two daddies, or actually a papa, daddy, and Riley. Riley is Papa's princess and Daddy's dragon. She loves her two fathers. When Riley's classmates ask her which dad is her real one, Riley is confused. She doesn't want to have to pick one or the other. Families are made of love in this heartwarming story that shows there are lots of ways to be a part of one. This is a great story that shows off all different kinds of families. I love that she's got a different name for, when I think about my friends and what they call their grandparents, all the different, names. My mom became a grandma about 3 years ago, and we actually had this sit down with my family because it was the first child, and they said, what do you all want to be called? What do you want to be referred to? I love that, Papa, Daddy, and Riley. I also think it is a great story to show, that families are made up of all different kinds of people. As the years have gone on in education, I have seen so many families change, especially here in Northwest Ohio. Excuse me. Sorry, my nose is starting to run. Sorry. I've seen so many families change in education, especially here in Northwest Ohio with the opioid crisis, where so many of our grandparents are now taking care of their kids full-time because they're grandkids, for whatever reasons, whether their a child is no longer able to take care of their own kids or whatnot. I think this is just another great supporting story to show, like, what? Family are the people that love you. You know who your family are, even if they're not blood. At the very beginning of the year, when I sit down with the kids in kindergarten, again, with asking the questions of, what's your favorite color, I always ask them to draw me a picture of their family, because every kindergartner understands what does that mean? I always say, draw the people in your house. So they don't have to draw, all their cousins and aunts and uncles, but show me who lives with you. That way I have a better understanding of your skill level with your drawing, but then I also have an understanding of you and where are you coming from and what do you have to deal with back at your home. But this is a really cool story about how, little Riley comes and they ask her, well, who's your dad? Who's your dad? Who's your papa? And she gets to be both. She gets to be the princess and she gets to be the dragon in this story.
There are that's okay. There are becoming increasing number of historical figures that are represented in picture books who are part of the LGBTQ community.
Yes, this next book, Pride, is the story of Harvey Milk and the Rainbow Flag by Rob Sanders. For those of you that don't know, in 1978, the activist Harvey Milk challenged Gilbert Baker to make a flag for the gay community. Gilbert designed the iconic rainbow flag that became a worldwide symbol for gay pride. This lovely picture book chronicles the history of the flag from its San Francisco origins to its current worldwide use. Now, the original flag had 8 colors, including hot pink and turquoise, but because of printing and manufacturing purposes, it was later changed to just the 6 colors. Nowadays, they have I've seen lots of different types of flags. There are the lesbian flag and the trans flag. And in 2018, they actually created the Progress Pride flag, which is created to honor people of color. So if you've seen this one, maybe most recently, that's probably the most updated one. Yeah. And the book takes you through, again, thinking about, how I use these in the classroom. I'm probably not going to just, have a whole lesson necessarily based upon this book, because with all the content and everything I have to teach, I'm not probably going to take the time out just to do this. But in my room, one thing I love to do is have books up around the classroom. I always have a book about diversity, a book about an artist's life. There are certain 4 or 5 different books every month that I always switch out. And it's interesting to see just having the books there, just letting the kids visually see that book is there. And then it's always interesting to see how many of the kids will then stop and question it, comment about it, bring their questions to me that I can answer for them. So sometimes it's just putting the books out literally in my classroom that does the trick, but
Visibility is important.
it is. It is. It makes them feel included. Yeah.
Another historical figure that a picture book was recently written about is about Dr. James Bradley. So it tells the story of Margaret Buckley, who in the late 1700s was denied an education. Her role was to, work in a shop or to take care of a family, and she rejected those. We would probably now see her transformation into Dr. James Bradley, or Dr. James Barry, pardon me, as a trans historical figure. The book doesn't go into a great amount of detail. The transition is just what it is, which is appropriate for the age. But once James Barry once James Barry becomes James Barry, he goes to medical school. He passes the medical exam. He becomes a surgeon in the military and lives out the rest of his life as he is, even falls in love. And there's a wonderful author's note that explains and unpacks all of the events of James Barry's life, the 50 years he spent as James Barry. So wonderful picture book. And then our last 2 books before we head into Q&A session and tell you about our favorite books.
We'll go pretty quick because we're running out of time. Next one, love this book. I know I keep saying that, but this one is like a really just beautiful book. It's called A Church for All by Gail Pittman. On a Sunday morning, we gather together. We are every color, every age, rich and poor. Our church is open, affirming and accepting. We believe in love instead of hate. There's room for everyone. This book celebrates a spiritual community that embraces all people, no matter their age, race, class, gender, identity, or sexual orientation, in faith and in love. It's based off of a real church, the Glide Memorial Church in San Francisco. And like I said, it's one of my favorites. The love and diversity in this book is sort of a metaphor of the greater church for the greater world, where we are all God's children. this is a real world, like I said, that we all live in. And it's all about, I love how when you go through the book and they get to the church and they see all of these different type of people. I mean, I don't think they could pack any more, diversity into this book. You think, you got a little bit of everybody in here. The renderings are absolutely gorgeous. And it's just a great story to remember that, what, we are all God's children, and it's beautiful. Look at that in the end. That'd be a great place to visit. Yeah. And then our final book today, I have this one that I love to share in my classroom too, is called All Are Welcome. Great book to share with the kids. Again, as a public school teacher, I get everybody. I don't get to choose who comes in my classroom. I get everybody. I am proud to get everybody. Yeah. And I do get everybody in both of my schools for the most part. So it's really, really a beautiful story on accepting everyone and their abilities as they come into your classroom. Lots of, again, diversity, color, friends. I mean, kids are kids. Kids love. It's beautiful. I keep saying that, but it is. It is. I don't know. It's just, I love it. It's a great. This is, if you don't have this one in your classroom library, this is a great one to have to share with your kids, especially at the beginning of the year, just to show that hey, we're all different and we're all here and we're all family. Yeah.
We were going to spend some time with our favorite queer affirming picture books. We have about 5 minutes left, and we will send a definitive list to you all, but we also want to make you aware of resources that we covered, the Human Rights Campaign report on growing up LGBT in America. If you want to look at the American Library Association, they have the Stonewall Awards and the Rainbow Book List, which many of these books appear on those lists. And we want to talk really briefly about the Trevor Project. It's a really important organization. It's an Academy Award-winning film was made in 1994 called Trevor. It was a short film, won an Academy Award, and then the nonprofit, the Trevor Project, was formed 4 years later in 1998. And the goal of the Trevor Project is to prevent suicide among LGBTQIA+ youth. They have the Trevor Lifeline, and the Trevor Project really started to take off in about the mid-aughts. Usually when we're in person at the Mazza, we do a little drawing. So Maddie and I decided to shake it up a little bit, and because you all have joined us today, we just want to show you that. Thank you.
By the way, for coming.
Yes, we made a donation for everybody who came to this session to the Trevor Project, and we want to thank you for helping us save LGBTQ youth and honor them as well. And we'd like to open it up to questions if anybody.
Such a great organization. Yes, they do so much good.
We have a comment. Have you heard Call Me Max by Kyle Lukoff? They said that's an awesome book for transgender children as well.
There it is, and it has a sequel as well, where they put on a show in their school, and it's a lovely picture book by Kyle Lukoff, who also just came out with his first middle grade novel as well. Excellent.
We have a thank you for the contribution to the Trevor Project as well on there. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for choosing to come to our.
You've been a great audience. Those are great questions, but yeah, thank you. Seriously.
Are there any questions that we can answer?
Just lots of thank yous coming in.
That's great.
If you guys do have a question, type it in and I will send it to the guys.
I love the last maybe, I don't know, 2 to 3 years. I know Ben has talked a lot about the Mazza conference and that he wants more diverse books, at least the last 2 years. And you've seen an explosion, even just since 2017, 2018, how many more of these books of people of color, different genders, all of this is just wonderful. It's just wonderful.
Would you guys be able to put your PowerPoint back up with the screen of your favorites that you
Oh,
had
yeah.
to send?
You want to take a screenshot of that?
Absolutely.
Somebody would like to.
I don't know. Red by Michael Hall. That's a good one for primary. It's about a little crayon that gets the wrong label put on at the crayon factory, and so when he goes to color, he's not that color, and it's really fun.
I like that one as well, Maddie. I have that in my library.
That's a good one. Of course, Julian is a mermaid. The Boy in the Bindi, that's really kind of a beautiful story of he watches his mom put on her little rhinestone and he wants one too. And so she lets him, and it's really kind of fun.
And of mine, I'll highlight specifically Jerome by Heart, which was a Batchelder honor a couple years ago. And it's very similar, I would say, from Archie to Zach, is its natural twin. I just love the images by Olivier Talbeck in that book. It's very sweet. First crush kind of story. And then Teddy's favorite toy I also very much love. It is LGBTQ adjacent. It's just a boy whose favorite toy is a doll who gets injured and his mother saves the doll. It's a fabulous book.
Do you guys have any middle grade titles to recommend?
How much time do you have? I know we don't have a whole lot of time since it's now 11 o'clock. I'd be happy if anyone wants a curated list. Actually, I can drop in the chat real quick a LibGuide that I've created at the university that has LGBTQ books listed in it, as well as others. Let me just pull that up really quickly and drop it in the chat, and that way you have it. And it's not just LGBTQ. There are all sorts of books, middle grade, picture, and young adult that are represented in this library guide. And let me know if you're able to access that.
It did come through.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Stephanie, and audience members today. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. We're going to go ahead and close down this breakout session so that people have time to take a quick break before we get back to our last presentation of the conference. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dan.